With us to stay curious.
Do the beginning again.
Okay. Have my fingers on the volume now.
Okay. Volume didn't come on.
Are we live?
We're live.
Well, hello, we're live. Kind of a little rough start there, but apologize for that. Of course, you know who I am, and this is Bob Castro. Bob, great to see you.
Great to see you too.
Bob's a great friend of the museum. He works for CinePost in Atlanta, where they will take your home movies and anything you've got and transpose them in there. But you're also a space historian, and you were here to observe the Apollo 1 and all the ceremonies going on here. Great to see you, Bob, back on the Space Coast. How's things in Atlanta?
Things are well, and we can be grateful that we're now finally have come out of COVID and all the silliness that involved with that. Although I did get it, COVID and flu last month, so I'm glad I got it over with to be able to come down to the Space Coast and help honor my heroes. As a space kid growing up in Miami, in front of the TV with my space toys, following along the missions, getting to meet the people behind the scenes and be able to say thank you, and to the fallen ones, the missing ones, to honor them is truly a dream come true.
And let me do a little adjustment here as I'm looking at that microphone, losing that cord real quick. You're a professional documentary maker. You have interviewed some really some icons of the space business, right?
Yes, people like Gunter Wendt, who helped put the astronauts in the spacecraft. Of course, he did a lot more than just that. Sam Bedingfield, who was first mechanical engineer for NASA.
Founder of our museum. And what was his badge number at NASA?
I was told it was number 4. So it's single digits, my goodness.
The first 20 people were given badges alphabetically.
Ah, okay.
And so, yeah, his badge number, NASA's number 4. Yes, the great Sam Bedingfield. We need to do a special program on him because he means a lot to this museum and has been gone about 12 years, I believe.
That's right.
But Ike Ridgel's another guy that almost made it to 100 years old.
That's right. There are plenty of men and women, including some of the families, because as you know, the families had to bear up tremendously the weight of running the households because their husbands and fathers were out on the Cape helping get us to the moon and to other planets and destinations. So several dozen people now, some of whom have passed away, but I'm look forward to compiling all that and letting future generations hear about those stories.
Just a side job for you there and the other things you do. We're all busy when we're involved with this space history. There's so many stories to tell, and everyone you meet is so unique, aren't they?
Yes, and we're in a particularly interesting time. Now, for us growing up, it was so exciting when President Kennedy said we're going to go to the moon, and we have this deadline. And you know, the Scholastic Weekly Reader every week in school would have a story about a planet we were going to or exploring, and then watching all the moon missions and so on. But now we're going back to the moon. We had the Artemis test last year, and we're coming up on another one. And there are now private space companies. There's a lot of space activity. But it's also a critical time because this is now the last opportunity that you or I or other historians and authors have to speak to the original people. They are rapidly leaving us, just like the World War II veterans and others.
And astronauts, engineers, VIPs of the Apollo era, they founded our American Space Museum, and we almost closed after the last shuttle was launched in July 2011. I came here with Karan Conklin, had been here for the 12, 15 years before with the Apollo era, building our wonderful monuments at Spaceview Park. And they almost lost the museum, and a bunch of us came on to help Karan, and we're thriving in some ways, but needs your financial support always as a proud nonprofit out there that is trying to get our share. So, you know, and you know what that's like. You were involved with the Apollo 1 Foundation. Tell us a little bit about that foundation that honors our Apollo 1 heroes.
Well, it's as it often is in America, it's a ground-up, grassroots type of effort. Although there are many people, the workers, co-workers, and families who did and always will remember Grissom, White, and Chaffee. Sometimes enough time goes by that it takes a little reminder for the wider general public. And I was very privileged to be able to meet some of the space veterans in college, for example. One of my journalism professors had been an NBC reporter. I then met Bob Special, who was an RCA photographer and took some of the famous photos, which you probably have seen. Vanguard 1 exploding on the launch pad, the shots of Shepard and Grissom and Glenn getting in their spacecraft. So hearing them, their eyewitness accounts said, wow, I've got to go down to the Cape to pay my respects on the 25th anniversary of the Apollo 1 fire. And that's when I met another private citizen who'd been doing the same thing for several years before, since the 80s. So needless to say, we hit it off immediately. And the deputy base commander at that time, Johnny Johnson, who was known to you and to this museum, put us together, and we held at first just a small private ceremony and then kept getting bigger and bigger. And now we have folks coming in from all over to pay honor and respect to Grissom, White, and Chaffee.
That's right. It was a privilege to be out there twice, thanks to you. The first time was so magical on the 50th anniversary, or 55th anniversary, I believe. Couldn't believe I was there. But yes, we're ending NASA's darkest week. We're going to just comment about that here in a moment. We do want everyone to know that tomorrow's show will really emphasize our auction, February 3rd. This is how we sustain a lot of our cash flow for the American Space Museum, is you buying artifacts. It's all autographs this time. Chuck Jeffrey, who you met, Chuck, our COO and collection analyst. Chuck has a security business in Orlando. It really gives a lot of time and money to this museum. 300 lots, all astronaut autographs. So this is a perfect. Who would you like to have that you don't have their autograph on?
Well, I'm not.
Well, I might bid on it for you and give it to you.
Well, thank you. I'm not actually a autograph collector and hound. I know that there's some people who do, and that's wonderful. I did have the opportunity to meet Gene Kranz, the famous flight director from the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo eras, and Bob Special did give to me a Apollo 11 flight plan that had been on the firing room consoles, and so I had Gene Kranz autograph that. So that's probably I've got who I need.
So there's some Gene Kranz in there. Maybe $100 would get him. You know what we want our supporters to do is buy an autograph. There's going to be some Mercury guys go for $60 to $100. I guarantee you that. Hope not, but there'll be a few bargains to be had. And sometimes just the flow of the auction. It's live. Go to the link there, QR code, or go to our website, and you can find it on our website. And but what is important is that you can take this autograph and then in another auction buy a photograph, maybe, or patch, or crew photo, and put it with that. Or buy crew photos. There's going to be a lot of crew photos from the shuttle era in there. So you get a crew photo all signed. It's usually $25 an astronaut. So a crew of 5 would be $125, and then add $100 for all of them signing it. So they're about $200 investment. But get other stuff to match with it, the patch, another photo, and take it down to your framer, and then you got something proudly to put on the wall and hand on to the next generation.
Yeah, making heirlooms as well as memories.
That's exactly right. So we encourage everyone to support us and check out. You can pre-bid now. Go to it now. You can register and pre-bid. If I want to get a Sally Ride autograph and I'm willing $200 for it, and the bid only goes up to $125, I get it for $125.
Okay.
All right. The $200 is how high I would go, and if you can't watch it, but it's live, it's fun to watch. So please support us that way. Of course, on a very sad note, we're here with Bob Castro, and I'm sure he remembers where he was that Saturday morning, February 1st, 2003. I was watching SpongeBob SquarePants with my daughter and my young daughter, and start flipping around during the commercial and like, wait, that don't look right. What's this streaking across the sky here on CNN? And so we know hundreds of people waiting for them to land this morning, 21 years ago.
I was at a computer exhibition, and as I pulled in the parking lot, the NPR Saturday News Bulletin, was coming on, and they were reporting that the space shuttle was on its way and should land in a few moments. And I said, okay, they're home. And so I went into the exhibition, and then I received a call from my employer, the previous employer to who I work for now, the vice president. And I was like, on a Saturday, the vice president is calling me? What kind of trouble could I have been in?
Really? What'd you do?
But he knew I was a space fan, and he told me that, and I immediately left, went back out, stayed in the parking lot for like a couple of hours listening to the coverage, and then, had to go home and grieve.
Absolutely. And we still grieve. I wanted to point out a couple things. This is the book you want to read. Our good friend Mike Leinbach, and of course our other friend Jonathan Ward. Show you their picture in a minute. Put this together a few years ago. There's Mike and Jonathan on the book cover there. And a real definitive view of this from the man who launched his friends into space, and another fabulous writer, Jonathan Ward, who also wrote a book about Eileen Collins. And Johnny Johnson helped him write 2 early books about the Cape Canaveral situation on there. So highly encourage to read this. It might be made into a movie. There's some scripts going around about it I've been privileged to know about. But what's important is to read the recovery, the love that all NASA people had, just not for the crew, but also for this orbiter. OV-102 is very much the 8th member that we lost on this day 21 years ago. And there's a picture of it outside the OPFs, all of the people that we talk about that worked in the orbital processing facilities, the garages of the shuttle. This was it's like you and having my 20-year-old Jeep, for example. Every idiosyncrasy about it, and that's just the way it was. Looking at OV-102 there, Columbia, you will never see an orbiter that looks like this one, because the black streak just to the left of your head there, on the wing, that's the only orbiter that has that black in there.
I'm missing.
Going out there. That was extra insulation they thought they needed for reentry, but that they actually painted on there. So that's a distinctive mark of launches. Look for that little black wing on in the side of the front wing there. But God bless the families who certainly don't want to think about this day. The families, the loved ones. There's girlfriends and boyfriends involved in this. And we honor them every day at the American Space Museum in our humble little display here that I was telling you, Bob, I see it 2 or 3 times a day. And we live with this every day. And there are days where I stop and pause. And really feel the meaning of all this. We have a beautiful display case there that has letters written by Israeli children to talk about Elon Ramon. There is the guest book at the Titusville Chamber of Commerce during the Challenger accident. People wrote thoughts and stuff in there. So, and down that's just down around the corner from our studio there, you see the green screen we're talking about today. But just wanted to let you know, at the American Space Museum, we can never forget, because we want these souls to live on, and we want to acknowledge them for the ideals that they lived for, not how they died. Well, let's talk a little bit about. You've done many interviews like this. This is in our Cape Canaveral gallery. You're talking to Ike Ridgel, who passed on. Nervous are you sometimes? There's always you're kind of a one-man show most of the time. I know when you're interviewing some A-list people, they might be a little wonder what the heck you're doing with that tripod and that sort of forth. So tell us a little bit about how you work.
Well, it was an honor, of course, to interview Ike, as well as some of the other veterans as well, because I first encountered him in history books. He's mentioned in Apollo Race to the Moon by Charles Murray and Catherine Bly Cox, an excellent source of the human history of the space program. And then to finally meet him and his lovely wife as well, Catherine, who I also interviewed about the family side of it. So yes, you're right. There's all these preparations, and as you know, all this technology that has to happen. But you have to then, like a fog bank, think through that and then speak through that to be able to connect with them in a human way. It's something for us. I mean, I had a great childhood growing up watching on TV the moon missions in 2001: A Space Odyssey. That's how I got into filmmaking. But then when I read the history books and saw the photo of the burnt out Apollo spacecraft, I just realized, wow, it's not a theme park. That these people each day are risking their lives so that we can go further, look further, and accomplish more. And it's important to keep them centered in our hearts, in our minds, and in our memories as we honor what they're doing to try to push back the boundaries between the known and the unknown. And it's sometimes work. Well, it's work to do this, to travel and do all the preparations and so on. But the reward is to be able to say thank you to people who are now still alive, but that other people who are interested in space in the future will only be able to look back at the books, the videos, the recordings of some, and they won't be able to say directly what we get to say. And so Ted Reese, one space veteran, he kind of challenged me. He said, "Why are you doing this? Why are you coming down from Atlanta, spending all your money to try to record, in his case, a story?" And I said, "Well, sir, thank you for saving our future." And he kind of blinked and looked away, and it's like, I wonder if anyone's ever said that to him. Of course, we should always thank veterans of any kind, always thank people who are in public safety or first responders, police, fire, anyone, but particularly those men and women of the space program.
Yeah, absolutely. It's historians of all historical areas, have really a grand responsibility. And we talk about here in our humble museum that many of the artifacts we have, Bob, are 60 years old. We have lots of things in our Cape Canaveral gallery where you're in there. That whole thing's about 55 to 60 years old in there, many of those things. And I want people to be looking at that just like they'd be looking at a Civil War Union bulkhead or a canteen from Confederate soldier or something like that in a display. And those artifacts are 160 years old.
That's right.
When you think about it. And so this is our impetus that to save the birth of America's space age right here where it all happened, in this delivery room, Brevard County. Here's a couple people that you were talking about a little earlier that a dear friend of a lot of people in the middle there that passed away not too long ago. Tell us who that is.
Oh, my goodness. That was Johnny Johnson. And when my mother and I came down on the 25th anniversary of the Apollo 1 fire, we corresponded with NASA and went through their protocol office. And Jill Rock drove us out to the site, and I had a little plaque and some flowers. And I was going to leave it and pay my respects, and that was going to be the end of it. But then this Air Force truck drives up, and there's Johnny Johnson. He said, "I'm always curious who's nosing around my Cape." Okay. So I told him why I was there. And he said, "Well, there's this young fellow that comes out here every year to do the same thing. You ought to hang around and meet him." And that's how I met Mark Pinchel, and the rest is history. So,
who are the other people there with you, left to right?
Well, left is Lori.
Lori
Collins, who's done a lot of your oral history recordings.
That's right.
As a university professor, and then on Johnny's right is Roland Miller, and Johnny Johnson introduced me in the 1994 ceremony to Roland Miller. He's a space photographer, and I used to have to explain this a lot, but
that's
now...
Roland Miller on the second from the left.
That's right. And so he's the author and photographer of the book Abandoned in Place.
Yes.
And he spent many years documenting the original launch sites as they make their way back into nature. I mean, they look like 4,000-year-old Mayan temple ruins sometimes.
Yes, they do. With
cracked concrete and vines growing up and rusted metal. But he manages to find these exquisite artistic compositions. I know his work. I don't know his face. And you see his work. Look at some of the credits of the work at the Atlantis building. That's right. And next to Roland is Bruce Fortin. Now, he was a security guard, and over a period of years, he would escort Roland.
Roland's Roland's in the striped shirt.
No, that's me.
Oh, that's you.
Yes.
Second to the. Okay.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, okay. So Roland is.
Is on Johnny's other side.
Okay,
And he's
gotcha.
in the middle.
The
Yeah.
tallest one. There.
That's right.
I got you.
So
That's you.
yes.
Okay. Well, we didn't say how long ago this picture was.
Well, I was thicker on top
I don't
and
look
thinner around the
anything
middle
like I do. Yeah.
in those days.
I was more looking at your face. But,
That's right.
Really.
Um,
Okay.
but-
Roland. All right. Good. Now I know what Roland looks like.
And this is on Launch Complex 36. It had flown its last flight, and I had photographed that with cameras and so on. But we were there to photograph it in its abandoned state before it was demolished. And then we were back down here for the demolition of 36, as well as Complex 40, Complex 13, which is now Landing Zone 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to 1 and 2, and I got to see...
Soon to be Via Space's launch pad.
Yes, there's a lot of activity there. And I got to see a SpaceX launch and landing. 2 of them, actually. One Sunday night.
Yeah, you
and
lucked
then
out big
Wednesday.
time.
Yes, that's right. I don't need to go to
2
Vegas.
launch and landings in a week. That's amazing.
That's
that
right.
You did. Yeah.
But the important thing is, as these old structures are being repurposed, because this land is too valuable to simply make it into a memorial and stop. It's a modern, thriving, working spaceport. And so Roland was preserving the old launch sites the only way he could on photographic film, still photography, and these beautiful artistic compositions. And I'm trying to do my part to preserve it on video and preserve the memories of the people who worked there.
And the person on the far right.
That's Bruce Fortin. He was a security guard who volunteered to escort Roland out, and they would be out before dawn so they could catch the sunrise and the early morning beautiful light on the Cape, and not just once or twice or even a dozen times, but over a period of years. And that's what really allowed Roland to accumulate the body of work. And then when I came along, I said, well, this is the documentary I never got to do when I was working for public television. And so I've been doing basically the video version of Roland's work. So he has a book, and I'll have a video.
We'll talk about him later. Maybe we get him on Stay Curious here.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a picture of you that is kind of probably typical of how I first met you a
Yes.
few years ago at one of our storage facilities, and you've got in there some archived film.
Mm-hmm.
You might even have one of these. That might be one of these that you restored for us.
That's right.
You can see on our YouTube. I'll talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But as I open this up, and I've opened these up before, and the first thing that hits you, this is opening up a film canister here that says film serial number HQ 187, title The Flight of Apollo 7, produced by MSC, which is the Manned Spacecraft Center for NASA's headquarters. Positive print, 24 frames a second, 14 and a half minutes here of history, sound and color. And we're already choking up here because, Selvin, can you smell it over there? It smells like vinegar.
Yeah.
Very strong
I
vinegar.
smell it now.
Yeah.
You smell it now?
Yeah, I can smell it now.
You folks
so I
at
had to
home,
give a shout out to Selvin's on
Yeah.
the board today. Marty took the day off.
Yeah.
And, but.
you folks at home are very fortunate that this is not smell-o-vision.
Yeah, right.
Because what happens...
It's horrible.
Yeah.
Why? Tell us what's happening
Yeah.
in this 52-year-old film here. Or whatever
Well,
it is.
in not all cases, but in some cases, there will be a chemical decomposition that takes place, sometimes because of exposure to heat or other non-optimum conditions. And then the film will start to chemically break down. The picture will change, like its color cast, or dimensionally, physically, the film will change. And that makes things a little difficult for us in the film preservation business. CinePost in Marietta, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta, it has got a lot of experience in dealing with what I call distressed film and trying to recover the images and sounds from film in a non-optimum way. If the film has been properly stored, we've even handled some film that was 100+ years old that was in pretty good shape. And it's like being in a time machine and going back and seeing people wearing the old clothes and spoked wheels on the automobiles and so on. And in some cases, we have been able to rescue films that no living person has seen, we were told by one of our clients.
Wow. The whole thing is just like a treasure chest.
Mhm.
You don't even know what you're going to see until you start putting the process together. We'll show a little bit of that in a minute, right?
Yeah, it's like being in a Doctor Who episode. You never know where you're going to go that day, but you're going to time travel.
Okay. Wanted to show this inside the tank, inside the thing here. It says everyone has accidents. If during the process of showing this film it should break, we ask you to do the following procedure. And it says, thank you, NASA Film Library. Now, this is copy 568. So we're not sure if there are actually 568 copies out there. I guess there would be. But how many survived? How many are even came to light, after they're in a box somewhere in there? We're not talking like the only copy of this, but it might be.
Yes. Well, a film historian wrote that there's more known about ancient Greece and Rome than of the first few decades of the motion picture business. The business records are fairly well kept, but the actual disposition of the media it wasn't really considered to be useful after its initial showing. The whole aftermarket and reruns and television and video and online and streaming, that hadn't even been thought of. So sometimes and we have to treat this. Sometimes we have old films come in and we may have the only surviving copy. In some cases, the custodian will warn us of that, but our procedures are still the same regardless. But we have to think about that. We may have the only surviving copy of a particular film.
There's the company you're working for there. Give a good shout out to CinePost there. CinePost and your friends watching you today.
That's right.
And
so even though I'm not at work, I kind of am at work because this is I get to spread the word about film preservation. So people who had motion picture films, home movies, or in the case of scientific, industrial, commercial, even feature films, the clock is ticking very loudly, and time is running short to help get it transferred to modern digital form.
That is a pungent odor. You smell it 5 feet. You smell it 10 feet away from yourself in there, can't you? Here's your Facebook page. There's some interesting videos of people doing their thing there with this. By the way, this was 16 millimeter film, about half the size of a 35 millimeter film camera there. And CinePost and other companies you've taken us to have given us the nonprofit rate. We do have over 30 up there, including this, 30 movies up there, including this one, that is part of a historical space film preservation project that comes and goes as the grant money comes and goes. And we're always looking for grant money for that because we do have other things to transpose. But this is on our YouTube channel, Bob, and we give you a big shout out there with Myron Lewinsky of CinePost for the video restoration. And tell them again where CinePost is located.
It's located just a few miles from Lockheed in Marietta. The address is 2160 Kingston Court, and we regularly hear aircraft coming overhead. That's of course where the Lockheed plant still makes aircraft, the C-130 and other aircraft as well. So it's kind of aviation themed and is an appropriate location. And in the old days, TV stations used to have film departments. And so that's where I got my start. So I was very fortunate to learn how to handle sprocketed film, cutting and splicing, and so on. So we do know how to handle new film. Some clients do still shoot because they want the organic look of film. And we can bring to bear all the experience and knowledge. What I like to tell clients is, you can have the benefit of all my mistakes. But as long as you choose a reputable company like CinePost, you can be assured that your film will be treated as well as it can be.
And go to their website, their Facebook, and they've done a great job on some things. And I got some personal things. Wish I'd brought them with me to send back with you, but I'll get those next time. Maybe. Okay. Well, I want to talk to Bob a little bit about coming to the Space Coast, some of the events that I've seen you at that was just amazing. This is a gentleman I will never forget, Mr. Don Arabian, whose nickname was Mad Don Arabian. And he was a character.
Oh my goodness! And again, I read of him in the history books in the Apollo race to the moon. He was an expert troubleshooter during the Apollo
That's
13.
what he did. He was an ombudsman
Yes.
troubleshooter in Houston
Hmm.
in a bullpen, if you would, of other engineers figuring out what was the latest glitch in the mission going on.
And how to solve it, how to diagnose, locate, and solve problems from 250,000 miles away.
Yeah.
So it was wonderful to meet him. I did interview him as well. And what I've been doing in my copy of that book is I'm having each of the, I call them celebrities, but the space veterans, autograph the page where they're mentioned.
Which book you talking about?
Apollo Race to the Moon.
Okay.
And so so to
Who
that,
are the authors of that?
Charles Murray.
Yes.
And Catherine Bly Cox.
I think I have that laying in here. That
Yes.
is one of the definitive books of all time,
Yeah.
for sure.
So what I said about earlier is I don't really collect autographs, but I would have people, sign things that they worked on.
Well, Don Arabian was a McDonald guy. I think he was a NASA guy, but he was in Houston. He did a lot of interesting things. Bob, one thing he did was when Gemini spacecraft was going to dock with the Agena to test rendezvous and docking, they sent up the Agena rocket ahead of time, and then the Gemini 90 minutes later. Sometimes that worked out. Sometimes the Agena blew up once. But they wanted to figure out, the Agena rocket had its own set of control dials, how much fuel was on board, and things like that, the temperature of the fuel. And they were trying to find a place inside the cramped two-man Gemini to put it. And Don Arabian, we have him recorded this with some rather salty language saying, you got windows, put it on the Agena outside the windows, and you're looking right at it. And, that's what they did. Don Arabian, he passed away about 2 years ago in his 90s. We still have some of his things that'll go up in auction. He was a thinker. He could draw his ideas like a cartoon. Have you ever seen that?
I haven't. I saw
Notebooks of his look like Charles Schultz of Peanuts fame did them. They're such well drawn and stuff like that. A really amazing guy, Mr. Don Arabian, and I think you agree with me. We were privileged to be around him a couple times.
That's right. Yes, indeed. And the even though he's not, all these folks are not necessarily as known as much as the astronauts. They helped get us to our destinations in orbit.
My gosh, couldn't have done it without them.
That's right.
Selvin, we have a question on someone watching our Stay Curious program today.
And a comment. Tom Musiak is asking, do you restore old color, negative, and transparency media? And Stevie J has made a comment that, or a recommendation, the book Orbital Planes.
Yeah, I'll do the second one first. Orbital Planes is one of Roland's subsequent books. He did that as well. Inner Space is another one that was shot on board the International Space Station by Paolo Nespoli under Roland's direction. To your first question.
Oh, really? We were led to believe that the first movie photographed on the ISS was the Russians in their science lab.
I'll have to defer to others who know specifically about it, but I remember Roland's kind of swearing me to secrecy when he said he was having Paolo do his project. Whether it was first or concurrent, I'll leave that to others. But yes, at CinePost we can handle timed media, which is videotapes, audio tapes, cartridges or reel-to-reel, as well as the various kinds of motion pictures, which are positive prints or camera negative. And we have had some that were literally there's a film that was in the camera at the time. We can do some slides as well, depending on the boundaries of your project. We can handle that as well. So if for no other reason, give us a shout. We can have a great chat about film preservation and maybe be of assistance to your family and or group project.
CinePost there in Atlanta. That's Tom Musiak, who photographed over 65 shuttle launches. A lot of them on Hasselblad film.
Oh.
And he also had a lab, a professional lab that did a lot of weddings, wedding photographers in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So hope you're having a nice warm day today, Tommy. And thank you for taking your time to watch Stay Curious today. This is a when I previewed our pre-production meeting
Mhm.
here. This was the morning of the Artemis Scrub in August.
Yeah.
Yet it was a magical evening. A lot of people showing up about midnight. The launch was, correct me, somewhere around 8 in the morning.
Yes, the launch time period. I think it was even closer.
7:55.
Yeah, closer.
It was right around daybreak.
Yes, to 6
But it was
o'clock.
scrubbed at about
Yeah.
10 minutes to go, really, wasn't it?
Well,
About a half hour.
it was obvious because of the thermal conditioning problems. They weren't going to get to where they needed to be to go for that launch. But actually, in reading all the coverage about what it was going to be like, I came down there the day before. So we camped out, and people were arriving. Not by midnight, the place was packed.
Yeah, this is
Before. No,
Space View Park.
Yeah,
That's the Max Brewer Bridge in the background, going over to Play Linda in the Wildlife Center. The just to the right of the picture would be where the pads are. But we had 2 German TV stations, 2 local stations. You had your rig there. Everybody was just filled with anticipation. Hundreds of people, not even knowing it's 3 in the morning, talking, people being interviewed left and right. It was a really wonderful scrub. Okay,
Yeah,
we
it
launched
was.
in November finally, but it was, I don't think people were disappointed that it scrubbed. They had such fellowship.
Yeah, they did, and it was very exciting. I never got to see a Saturn V launch or Saturn launch of any kind in person. Always saw them on television. Even though I was in Miami, my mother didn't really like crowds, so we didn't do that. So here, a rocket of the class of thrust of a Saturn V, I think it actually was 8 million pounds thrust, was too good to pass up. So reading the press reports about how many thousands or hundreds of thousands of people are going to be in Brevard County, it was like, well, okay, I'll roll the dice. But I said, I've got to get there like a day and a half ahead of time, and I decided I'm going to camp out. And it started to fill up, on the Sunday for that Monday attempt. You're right. The German TV crew came around, and for some reason, people were asking me questions. I wasn't speaking. I was setting up my stuff, but I answered their questions, and apparently they liked the answers and said, well, we'll set up right here. So we did some live shots back to Germany for their equivalent of Good Morning Germany, the morning show. It was still dark here. But particularly young kids. Young kids would come up or run up and would be running around. And of course, kids do that anyway. But they would run up, and then they would ask, and some of them were very perceptive questions. About like that object there. Yes, there's no astronauts on it now. It's the first test flight, but it will have astronauts at some point. That's going to go from this world to that one up there, and they realize the same thing I realized back in the 1960s. I'm alive to see that. It should have been Jules Verne or H.G. Wells or Newton or Robert Goddard or Tsiolkovsky or any of these folks. They deserved to have seen that. But what we can do is we can watch and observe and record in their honor and for the future, to let people know what it was like to be there when historic events occurred, such as going from the Earth to the moon again.
Well, it was what a day that was, and night it was. You described that perfectly. Just being there is the thrill of a lifetime. And I never saw a Saturn rocket go up. I never saw a shuttle go up. Came to a couple scrubs, but now, how we count how many rocket launches you personally see in a year. You count the ones you missed and subtract it, because it was like every 3 days last year, and they're gonna go over 100 this year maybe. That's every 3 days. What a way to honor and just save for a minute. I'm going to give you this patch. Our rocket hobo Ozzy, who died. He passed away August 6th.
I didn't hear that. Okay.
And you know that? He died in his sleep at age 72.
Wow.
We're going to honor him and create a 321 day honoring the area code that Ozzy. How much you have that rocket hobo?
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I of course did speak. He might even have show up in your photo there. He was set up to the left of the circular brickwork, and he had loudspeakers. The reason
there he is. I see him. I see his shock of white hair there, just right below your.
Oh yeah, you're right.
There.
The viewfinder.
Beneath the viewfinder of your rig there,
That's right. Well, he did a great public service because he would provide a relay of the countdown so that the people in the crowd could hear it. And I actually looked for him Sunday night at the launch and didn't see him, but I didn't realize that he
Sorry,
had
we didn't
passed.
communicate that.
That's
Yes,
right.
we're going to have a March 21st, March 23rd. We're going to honor. He's the father of the 321 area code. That had to split in 1999 when Orlando took the area code that was here, and the Space Coast had their own. He lobbied for that. Very ingrained in the community in places like our museums of Brevard, the Chamber of Commerce's. He did. He was quite a character at Radio Shack, I understand.
Yes.
Walking around with a Tandy computer strapped to his body and camera and the whole rig there. Quite a guy. We miss Oz band, but we'll be talking more about that, and we'll get you in the loop on that.
Okay.
Well, that's kind of here's coming full circle with what you've done around here. This is actually a photograph taken in 2021, I would gather. You have a mask hanging off your ear there to get a picture out there at pad 34. There's so much history around here that is disappearing. And, you're one of the people that's hell-bent to capture some of it. Are we at a no return of losing some of these launch pads and things like that to the new age?
Well, you have to reconcile yourself with the fact that you cannot save everything. That some things you will be able to keep, but other things you have to let go. So it's important to determine what the essence of that is, and if it's someone's story. Rockets are involved, but primarily in the project that I've done, I've got over 150 hours of material recorded on this. Some of these grizzled, no-nonsense veterans, would get kind of teary-eyed and choked up. And one of them even told me at your museum in the previous location, he said, I would have worked there for free. It was that important. And another one said, my grandchildren don't care what I did right now, but when I'm gone, and he is now gone, I want them to know what it was that was important. And it's a human story. And rockets are the driving factor. But primarily, the story doesn't take place on the moon or Mars or out there. It takes place here as people react to it. And you're right, at that Artemis launch attempt, the fellowship that was there was amazing. There was a gentleman from Huntsville who had worked on the Saturn V, and he had his children and grandchildren. He had all this entourage, and he had seen and worked on a Saturn V, and now he was going to, it scrubbed. He saw it in November. I talked to his son again, but that for him was the completing the circuit, if you will, the emotional circuit. And so the party atmosphere is simply remarkable, and I wouldn't have missed it for anything.
And we hope to party again here. We're going to have to wait a year and a half now for the next Artemis launch, but they're going to do it. And here we have our Florida Peninsula behind us here. We're at that little horn right there is where we're talking to you today from. Just 12 miles away from the launch pads over there. And you'll keep being drawn back here, I know.
That's right.
To these projects and stuff going on. Before we share a little bit about another aspect of space history that's being preserved, did you have any final thoughts about what you do to share with our Stay Curious audience today, Bob?
Well, one thing that really pressed home to me when I helped out with the Apollo 1 Memorial Foundation, before the foundation, with the ceremony, was like, okay, Mark and I had been to 34, and we knew that other workers and other family members had come out there at their own, but as far as trying to have an event, I said, well, I'll put out the word. And you cannot rely just on professional historians to capture history. Each of us carry shards of history with us. And it might be our parents or grandparents. Start there, start asking them questions. When I started this, cameras were the size of luggage and would fit, on your shoulder and were, very, very heavy. But now we all have things in our pockets where you can record your parents, your grandparents, neighbors, who knows? There was one gentleman who served on Operation Crossroads in the Bikini Atoll detonation. Now's the chance to try to preserve that. You can't save everything, but if you make a good faith effort, you will enrich the historical context for the future generations.
Well said there, Bob Castro. We really appreciate all that you've done to preserve the American space age and help us here at the American Space Museum. Uh, we're going to segue here at the end of the show here to some family pictures, if you will, about another piece of history that's important that we save, and that is what's left of our orbiters. And there is our good friend Doug Forrest on the right. Doug, good to see you there with Bharat. Bharat, a great supporter of our museum here with his mom Mal and father Rama. They do Go History Travel on Facebook, and they would have been at our astronaut memorial, except that this was going on in Los Angeles, putting stacking Endeavour to a real external tank and solid rocket boosters on this fabulous display out there at the Los Angeles Museum. This is in the middle of the night, Monday night, Tuesday morning out there. So we're going to see some pictures that Doug shared with us during the day. I love this one. Your comments too. He said it was a really amazing night to watch, and a good crowd of people there watching it. They had credentialed some people there. This is during the evening to give you an idea of the structure there.
Yes, my space friend back in Atlanta, Mike Ellenberg, sent me a message saying that it was the last space shuttle stacking that will ever take place. And so that is a moment of history, and just to be there, it would of course nice to be on the other be there in person, but you can't be in two places at once. But to experience that and realize that you're seeing that through your eyes for someone else who might not even be born yet, and that you have the opportunity, if not the responsibility, to try to record that, your thoughts and feelings, and to preserve that some way, electronically or on paper or some other way, and pass that down, or meet a young child later on and say, yes, I did see, and this is what it was like to see the space shuttles, that when they were operational and were getting ready to fly, they would be undergoing this process as well.
Great pictures, Doug Forrest. Thank you. 2 R's in that Forrest. When you look him up, he's a pencil artist in his spare time. He works in the business out there in L.A. In the CG world, or creating wonderful things behind green screens. I think Doug is CG artist. He's going to correct me what kind of graphic artist he is, but he's a good one. And you're going to see his work here in a minute. But the orbiter is encased in the plastic vinyl there, so that during construction and so forth, the tiles don't get dirty and other things don't get dirty that they'd have to clean up. They actually mothball Navy ships with that, and airplanes in there. I thought this was a cool picture, Doug. You're looking down the alley and you see the spaceship down the alley there. It might startle some people by surprise there. And there's Doug. Thank you, Doug, for sharing these pictures there, up there. And to give you an idea of what kind of a artist he is, appropriate that we share this with you.
Yes.
Of course, our Apollo 1 astronauts, Grissom, White, and Chaffee there, in rendition of the goal that they lost their lives doing. So thank you, Doug Forrest, for sharing those pictures with us on Stay Curious. Thank you, Bob, for a great program here. We want people to remember that on Fridays on Stay Curious, we do Future Fridays, trying to do that steadily, talking about Earthlings working to be a multi-planetary society. One day the world's gonna be used up, everybody says, so we gotta find another place to live, and or we might destroy it with the politics of the world the way they are. But Future Fridays, what we try to do on Stay Curious. Mondays, we try to bring you backyard astronomy. If there's some breaking news or something else, we don't do that. But Selvin, who do we have watching today on our Streamlabs program?
Doug Forrest, Dave Stange, Tom Yuxi, Robert Law, Gary Ugeriel, Cliff Watson, Steve J, William Whiting, Tom C. Leanto, Cynthia Rossi.
All right. So I bet Cynthia
Hello to all of you.
Rossi and Bill Whiting saw Jan Davis today. I'm going to go out and try to see her tomorrow, the astronaut du jour at the Space Center.
Mhm.
She's got a book out about her dad was a World War II pilot of whatever he flew, and she became an astronaut. Jan Davis is out at the Space Center over the weekend, so I'll make sure I do see her. As she does follow us on on Facebook, and also watches some of our programs on Stay Curious on YouTube. Thanks to Nick Thomas, our astronaut wrangler, who'll be doing a program on a Monday here. So there's our auction, folks. There's the QR code. Since you got your cameras out there to hit that, that'll take you right to the link to register you so you can start bidding now.
That's right.
And on all autographs, okay? I think there's only one Neil Armstrong in there, but there's a bunch of Buzz in there and all of your shuttle heroes, a lot of crews there. People sometimes collect autographs of all the shuttle crews and so forth. So once again, thank you, Bob Castro.
All
You're
right.
always welcome, my friend, on the set here. Stay curious. We appreciate what you're doing to preserve space history. So until tomorrow on a future Friday, I'm Mark Marquette saying we can't wait to see you again to bridge the space between us.